create a room. Oh, that's for next time. Next. Okay. The screen, go there. Next. And faces, photos, control, and camera, mutual audio. Okay. Next. Request. Okay. What does that then? Do they have to join the live? Oh, there's a couple of joined. Oh, okay. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
This is our first time trying this out, so
yeah, just
you have to bear with us for a bit.
Yeah, we can't hear you, but we can see you waving. Thanks, Sandy. Guys from Moving Forward. Sibo, you've joined. Thank you so much. I'm Dietland Becker from Remax Panache, and
I'm Corne Nothnagel from Cormiru Architects and Design.
And we've got 3 lads and a toucan behind us, providing a really nice cup of coffee. It's their first morning here outside in Lucy Junior Primary. They did the school run this morning, so happy days for everybody back at school, and welcome to term 3.
Yeah. So Dietland and I will be doing a couple of these once a month or so for any property or architecture related questions. So we've got, I think, 5 questions that you've
prepared. I've got some questions that have already been sent through. So I'm just going to ask Corne, and if you've got any questions in between, please just pop them up and we'll try and get to them in the next 10 minutes that we live. So like I said, bear with us. But the first question I had for Corne, which now that it's disappeared. This is what happens when you live and everything disappears. Okay, first question. You there?
I think I'm there.
If anybody can hear Corne, just pop a thumbs up and a wave, please. Thank you. Music. We're back there. Technical difficulties. I walked into a house the one day and they were running to renovate the bathroom, what happens normally in a house is you've got the old toilet and the bathroom, and there's always a single wall between, and they wanted to make the bathroom bigger and remove the wall. Do we need to do plans? How do we have to go about that? Because I know on our sale agreement we always say to people you have to update plans, and the banks are now requesting plans all the time. So what is your take on that?
Yes, so there's 2 or 3 issues related to that. The first is when the house is older than 60 years in KwaZulu-Natal, it has to go through a MAFA, and therefore, although it might not be a structural change to the building, a MAFA would require those plans to be updated. If the house is not older than 60 years, then it doesn't necessarily have to go through council. The owners or the buyers might require the plans to be updated, but it's not a requirement in terms of the national building regulations. So where it does become a problem is if the property or the glazing for those rooms, the lighting and ventilation are affected because of SANS 10400 that came in around 2010, 2011, then it does affect the lighting and energy calculations and the use of space, and then it is possibly a requirement. But it is not a requirement in terms of the national building regulations for the property plans to be updated.
Okay, perfect. So you're talking about lighting and ventilation. So one of the other questions that I've seen happen along the way is people have had sliding doors on their home, and obviously now they want to do the more stack back doors, and there's obviously a popular move from wooden windows to aluminium because it's cheaper in the long run. Do we need to do plans for that change from sliding doors to stack back doors?
Stop the music again. Again, structurally, not necessarily. It might be if the size of the opening gets bigger, then it becomes a structural issue in terms of the lintels or the beam that carry that opening. In terms of the lighting and ventilation, if the opening is getting bigger or smaller, the energy calculations will have to be redone. If they're the same or similar, then you don't necessarily have to submit them to council, but again, depending on the MAFA and the age of the building or the use of space, you might. If it's exactly the same size and shape, if it's aluminium change for aluminium, then 99% of the time you won't need to be updating the plans. If it is from timber to aluminium, then the energy calculations do come in and you need to update.
So you're saying the energy calculations is the glass or the actual frame?
Well, the
What
frame
is
and the glass.
And the glass, okay.
Yeah. So the glazing would be similar,
Yeah.
but it's the energy and heat and cold transfer and the R values for the glass.
Okay.
Sorry, for the aluminium frame or the timber frame.
Okay,
So
perfect.
those ratio or values are different.
Okay, any questions in between? We haven't had anyone else popping some questions up, but we do have some other questions that we were asking. Just trying to think now. There was the one about the retaining wall that came through.
Again, from a structural point of view, if you have a brick wall or a retaining wall lower than 1 meter, you don't necessarily need an engineer to sign it off. You can comply with the regulations as long as you tick the boxes on the regulations. In terms of the submission, again, the MAFA comes into play if the property is older than 60 years, but then the municipality would want to look at that in terms of change of level. If it's a commercial building, so it might be a residential building used for commercial. So in the Durban North area, there's a lot of houses that are converted into office buildings and that type of thing. So you might have a departure from the zoning specifically for that, and then you'll need some kind of protection barrier. But if it's a residential building, similar to change in level for pools, as long as the boundary is secure and people from outside can't get in, then you don't necessarily need plans submitted in terms of.
Okay, all right, perfect. One of the other things that I've just had of late is, I can see the sun's just coming that way, right? I'll just decline that call quickly. More technical difficulties. One of the things I've noticed of late is I went into an apartment and they have completely open planned the apartment and renovated it, and they did get body corporate permission, but they haven't submitted plans to council. Do they need to do that in order to sell the property, or what happens with creating an opening between the kitchen and the lounge in an apartment?
Again, structurally it might not be a problem, but you are changing the use of rooms potentially, and that affects things like ceiling heights. Different rooms have different requirements or minimum requirements for ceiling heights. So in a building, if it's all open plan and the ceilings are all minimum requirement, then it's not necessarily required to, from a structural point of view, but the use of space and updating that for council would be a requirement. Okay. And unfortunately, a lot of contractors tell people, oh, you don't need plans for this, awnings, internal changes, because they say it's not structural, you don't need plans for it. It is a little bit more complicated, and every house and every situation is a bit more unique, and you have to look at it by case to case. But in general, very few of the structural changes are required to be signed off by an engineer, but for municipality you do.
Okay, so that's for the apartment sorted. I've got a carport at my house which is on my boundary wall. When I bought the property a couple of years ago, it was there, and at that stage we didn't need plans passed by council, but apparently now I have to have plans done for my carport because it's up against the boundary wall. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a bit of a misleading thing.
And my house is definitely older than 60 years old, because I think it was built in the 1930s.
Unfortunately, again, a lot of contractors and companies putting up awnings tell people they don't need plans, and you've always had to have plans. So it's just that 5-10 years ago it wasn't asked for, and council wasn't following up so much on it. And so it wasn't that it wasn't required, no one really checked, and it wasn't chased up. But the building inspectors and the municipality are getting a bit more strict. The banks are getting more strict to approve bonds for properties with any changes that aren't up to date. So it's not just that the estate agents would require it. Banks are getting a lot more sticky. Buyers are getting more clued up and don't want to deal with it 2-3 years down the line.
Yeah.
It is.
So just going back to the bond story, I've had one of late which has been a really interesting one, where the banks have all requested copies of the plans. Up until recently, it's always been FNB that have requested plans. But of late we've had ABSA and Standard Bank requesting plans, and this property specifically has got a roof room structure and one drywall internally in the property, and the bank has actually requested that the one section of the drywall be removed, but obviously sorry, another call coming in there, she's overseas so she doesn't know that I'm here. And the bank has requested that we remove the one section of the drywall, but the roof room structure is obviously there. So Corne helped me. He went out to the municipality to check the approved plans, went to site, did a site visit, and now obviously we've had to do a report to the bank, and we're waiting for the bank to actually say is everything okay for registration of transfer to actually proceed. So this is the first time I've been hit with the bank actually putting it in the special conditions of the bond grant. So it's become quite something that purchasers and sellers need to be aware of going forward, is making sure that the plans are definitely up to date and approved as built plans before we even put the house on the market, or at least get the process going while the house is being marketed for sale, because you can get to that stage where now we potentially have a delay on registration of transfer, people are relocating, and we don't know how long it's going to take at council. How long does it take at council, by the way?
Yeah, that's one of those questions I keep getting asked, and it is really how long is a piece of string. Have a very real example. I've had a client that decided to build just after the lockdown. They asked me to come and do plans for them, did the plans, we submitted in November of 2020, and they understood the risk and they said, listen, we're going to carry on. The house was a MAFA, we got a MAFA approval, they started building. They, however, did not complete everything. They decided they'll do the garage much later. In the meantime, they decided to immigrate, had a baby in between, got the sellers. The bank said, listen, we want an occupation certificate. We said, we've got approved plans, but everything's not up. They said, we can't give you the occupation certificate until everything is built the way it is, or you have to submit new plans to show that that garage is being omitted.
Oh, wow.
We then had to go back to a MAFA, get approval to show that we're omitting the garage, submit plans again, get the building inspector, and I picked up the occupation certificate on Friday.
So that's from December, so that's 18 months it's taken.
So, yeah. Wow. And we had to go through a MAFA again, and now if the buyer wants to do their garage again, we have to submit plans a third time, back to the MAFA, back to the municipality to put the garage back on the plan.
Wow.
So yeah, unfortunately, that is a unique situation where it took extra long, but the municipality has a new online system that everyone's getting used to, and it does take a little bit longer. The Umhlanga is a little bit quicker and probably a bit more efficient, but the area is also a bit smaller. Buildings are less complicated, newer buildings, so maybe that is one of the reasons the central municipality is taking a bit longer.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say generally about 6 months.
Okay, so. Perfect. So if we are planning on getting a house on the market in the next couple of months, we need to check your plans are all up to date, and obviously Corne can assist with anything there as well if we get to that point that you don't have correct plans drawn on windows being changed, doors, etc., as we've discussed in the last couple of minutes. So thanks very much. I think this has been a great first one for us. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks very much. And then guys, just remember, if you're dropping kids off at Alusia Junior Primary, 3 lads and a toucan are here for the morning run, and obviously the AVIATOR is here in general for a pub and a grub.
Yeah. Lunch, dinner.
We lunch, dinner. We've done a bunny chow Friday here even once before, so maybe we'll see you here down the line. Have a super Tuesday. Super Tuesday.
Feels like a Monday.
Feels like a Monday. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye. Thanks for joining. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Okay, how do we end that? There we go.
Thank you.
I don't know how to end it. Cross. There we go. There we go.